Good afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate your time if you're tuning in. So part of our, I suppose we're not really calling them stripped back conversations, but they kind of are really authentic conversations with people which we would probably classify have got that expertise. So I'm here with Dan Wynne Willson, head teacher currently of Warden Park. This is actually being streamed across all of our channels. So it'll be on YouTube, be on LinkedIn. Feel free to share this as well, because part of these conversations is actually really talking to people that are, without trying to sound too coarse, doing the do. So, you know, Dan is a really experienced head teacher, and we want to have these conversations. We were just sharing previously in our kind of prep conversations that we both did our masters in educational leadership, but there's a realism to the theory that we've all learned, and there's a realism to what's happening on the ground at the coalface. So, Dan, I'm just going to bring you in a moment just to introduce yourself. Let us know where you're a head teacher, any relevant experience. Be great for people just to understand your current expertise.
Yeah, so I've recently joined Warden Park Secondary Academy as head teacher, a large secondary school in Cuckfield, very high achieving. Prior to that, I was at Eastbourne Academy as head teacher for a couple of years. And prior to that, I was working for a large academy, working as a school improvement lead across 3 different schools. So a variety of different leadership roles over recent years.
Amazing. And that was actually the reason why I wanted to speak to you today, is again to reiterate that focus on what are head teachers doing on the ground. And the conversation today specifically is about adopting systems. Now, we know that you've actually adopted Pupil Progress both at Eastbourne Academy and then moved to Warden Park and then adopted it again at Warden Park. Now, this isn't about why you should be using Pupil Progress and why is it you used it first off in Eastbourne Academy, but also then, you know, moving over to Warden Park. I'm actually really interested in why, how you implemented that system. So how did you do it at Eastbourne Academy? And then when you came over, how did you actually do it then, and what have you learned from it? So really the first question for you really is, how did you roll it out at Eastbourne Academy? And then I suppose the second question is, what went well? And I suppose we can then dive into maybe what didn't go so well and what you learned from that experience.
I think before even I talk about the how I rolled it out, is to think about why we rolled it out. And I think with any system that you look at, any software package you look at, and there are thousands out there, for me, the fundamental bit has to be, does it benefit the students? And then sitting closely behind that is, does it make life easier for my staff? And other factors such as what sort of training might be needed and that sort of thing. So when we initially rolled out Pupil Progress at the Eastbourne Academy, it was there to solve a problem. And the problem was we needed better outcomes for students. Our students weren't necessarily forensically aware of what they needed to do to improve. And although they were getting that information from teachers, that wasn't in a really clear and concise way that they could easily digest and access. And also we wanted to engage with our parents as well and give information to them easily and give more detail to our parents. So rolling out Eastbourne Academy, we did roll it out across all curriculum areas initially. And it was rolled out through my deputy, who oversaw outcomes. We started the process by sharing with our curriculum leaders what it could do for them and what it could provide for them and what workload reduction it would have for their roles, but also the power of information that it would give to their teachers and to the students and to parents as well. So it was a pretty easy sell, especially as we were looking at reducing workload and improving things for students. So that was a pretty easy sell. The difficult bit then is actually how do you roll it out? And the key at Eastbourne was about the training that was offered. So I'm going back a few years now, but with our rollout and with the training, initially we had online training with it was either you, Brett, or one of your team from Pupil Progress, who delivered training to myself and my leadership team to ensure that we were sort of experts in how the system worked. And then from there, I had an incredibly capable deputy. I mean, more than capable, she was brilliant. And she then rolled out training to a small group of staff initially, which were her sort of raising standards team, who some were middle leaders. So they had an understanding of what data we would get as a school and what we would hold, so that when we could then roll out the next layer of training to our curriculum leaders, there were 3 or 4 people within the school who had a real understanding of what Pupil Progress could do, and then they could answer any questions that would come up. Because whenever you roll out a system, however good it is, you're going to come up against blocks. You're going to come up against people who are apprehensive for any reason, any number of reasons, about a new system. And the more knowledge and expertise you've got in your school around that system, the easier it is to overcome those hurdles. So real training, selling the vision, the real training of key people, and then rolling it out to all of our curriculum leaders. From there, they disseminated that information through to staff. With that, we had training guides that we put out. We obviously had all the support from Pupil Progress. We backed it up with assemblies to the students, because often when you roll out a new system, you give all the training staff, but you forget actually to train the students as well. So the students are getting a whole load of information. What can they do with that information? And then also sharing that with parents as well and offering training for them. Now, training for parents is trickier, but it's giving information to parents and giving them an understanding of what this software can do for them and the information they will get out at the other side. So training is absolutely essential in the rollout of any software launch, and it was very successful at Eastbourne Academy in terms of the adoption by staff. So there's big buy-in. Parents really valued the extra information they were getting, as did students, and the impact was felt maybe a sort of year behind where we rolled it out. With the year 10 group we had, where the outcomes were looking far stronger. And one of the things was because of the Pupil Progress and the effectiveness of how we rolled this out.
That's interesting. There's a couple of things I want to dive into there, because I've just chunked it up. I've got a piece of paper in front of me, and that first bit of the conversation was about that you went buy-in and then you went training, right? So I want to dive into a little bit of that buy-in, because I know that you would have seen the software, and I know a lot of teachers do this, and head teachers in particular. Whether it's our software, whether it's someone else's software, they go, that's where we need to go. So I want to just pick apart a little bit. You talked about the why. You were like, look, this is what we're going to be doing and why. But then I also noticed that word ownership, because you said, I'm going to empower the deputy head teacher here. So I wanted to explore a little bit, when you went to Eastbourne Academy, how did you get that buy-in from the senior leadership team to say, this is it's going to be sticky. It's not going to, you know, we've got to get the whole school on board, but this is where I'm trying to go. How did you tackle that?
The buy-in was through, it was an area of school development that we needed to work on significantly, and that was how we use data. So I think I said right at the beginning, there's lots of software out there, and there's some amazing software packages out there, but you don't adopt them all because your school might not need them. So we had a need. Our need was we're not using data effectively to ensure greater progress for students. And students were too reliant on teachers for, I guess, what to do next. And constantly going back to teachers for that information without having that information at their fingertips. So the buy-in and the sell was actually, well, here's the problem, and here's a system that we believe can be a solution. But when we're going to roll this out, this is what we're going to do to support you. So the support was look at, you know, when data is being put in, how is that being done? How's that being managed? Making sure that we're not doing double points of entry for data, you know, making those single points of entry. And that was part of the research we did with Pupil Progress, how it integrated with, we were using Bromcom at the time and Cicero, I think it was. And so how did Pupil Progress integrate with those systems? So there was no doubling up of data, and actually teachers could see further down the line that this was going to reduce their workload and support their students. So that's the buy-in, that actually we've got a problem and this is a solution, rather than here's just a new package and some more work you're going to do, and isn't it shiny and great?
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting, because I think we're trying to really pick apart, because I was thinking about myself as an assistant principal. So I actually never, you know, I was on a journey. I did my MA in educational in leadership, but that vice principal level, you are really dependent on other people really seeing what you see. So it's a step that I really am quite passionate about not overlooking, which is you've got to really get people to understand. And actually just looking at what I've been scribbling down here as well, which is, if you don't identify the core area that everyone knows is the problem, they're not necessarily going to marry what you can see. So it's actually identifying whether that is in your school development plan, whether it's something that Ofsted have screamed that this is a major problem, actually using those as the key. Look, you know, this is not just me. I've not just had a funny 5 minutes and got really excited about something. This is something we really need. And
I think that, just sorry to butt in, that's where it came from, thorough self-evaluation. And although I rolled it out pretty early in my start as head teacher at the academy, I had been working for the academy chain, looking and evaluating different schools within the academy. So I knew data was an area that we needed to work on, and staff were aware of that as well, because the system was muddled and onerous. So
yeah, I mean, that's great. So the other one I also wanted to dive into a little bit, I've just applied the word ownership. There's no, you know, just let us know how it went. But I know that you said previously a moment ago about, you know, I brought in my deputy who was going to lead on this. How important do you think that was to give him that ownership? Or was it a he or she?
It was a her.
Oh, it's her. Yeah. So how important was it to give that ownership to someone to aid you? How did that help the process? I'd like, you know, what?
Yeah, it's essential. I mean, as a head teacher, I get the nice job of thinking up all these lovely things that can happen.
Yeah.
The reality is, the head teacher isn't the one that implements different systems. The reality is, it's leaders at all different levels who do that. And for my deputy at the time, she was relatively new into post. This was a really exciting time for the school where we could be pushing things forward, making good changes, and this was a fantastic bit of software that was going to underpin the work that she believed in very strongly anyway. And you know, she was an expert with data, but was an expert in data, having been head of English and transformed results there. So it was what you do with data, which was the really important bit. So giving her ownership was key, and giving a group of people ownership. a group of staff ownership of that was key, because then they can go away and be creative with it and go off in all different directions that maybe you didn't anticipate. And that's the exciting bit of systems, you know, when you're launching a new system, is actually the creativity that people bring to the project, and when people get excited about rolling out different things.
Yeah, do you know what? Leadership fascinates me, because these are the little intricacies that I think sometimes gets overlooked, because you can have these we've had it with Pupil Progress, where a school has definitely needed it, really enthusiastic about it, and it's failed because they haven't rolled it out properly. And it's so frustrating. And talking to you now, there's some intricacies here that having someone who is probably thinking, quite rightly, this could be really good for my career here. Like, I've got something that is against my name that I can put on my CV, that, you know, again, whether it's a tool that's helping with well-being, whether it's a tool that's helping with formative assessment, whether it's a tool that's helping with tracking and monitoring, having someone that's, oh, okay, this is against my name, I'm going to make this work, is actually such a powerful thing. That is, because you can go, you know, we can go through the rollout, you know, we're training people. I'm going to get onto the training in a moment, but actually the people behind it at that, well, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. And this could also selfishly be good for me. I mean, do you have any comments on that? Because I say to the Pupil Progress team, you've got your own careers as well. So you've got to really think about, well, what can you grip hold of that allows you to shine as well? Oh, sorry, go on, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, I actually agree with what you're saying, but I would caveat and say that's never the reason for doing it. You know, that's a lucky side effect of it. And yeah, you know, if I think, you know, we're talking Pupil Progress, but think about Pupil Progress, you know, this is a system that affects pupils, staff, and parents, you know, so it affects our whole community. So yeah, it's a great project for people to show impact and show that they've worked with a number of different parts of your, you know, number of different of your stakeholders. But it's definitely the reason we did it. As I said, that the reason has to be, what's the problem? And then my job as a leader, and leaders' jobs in my view, is, you know, staff are our most valuable asset, simple as that. And my job is to create clear a path for them to do a really good job. And you know, Pupil Progress is part of that. That clears a path for our middle leaders and senior leaders to do a really good job.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, there's a question I'm going to come to at the end, which is actually about it's not going to get muddy, but there's a question at the end about spending and cost effective, because some people are like, you know, it's more spend, but then actually not being able to see, well, that investment is actually creating a huge amount of, you know, time pressure, workload, et cetera, but we can come back to that at the end. So the second part you mentioned there was about how critical the training was. So that buy-in piece, ownership, getting some people to understand how critical this is to our own journey, and pairing that, so you've got that trust that people, oh, this person is actually in line with the school's needs as well. The training, you were talking about the importance of training. What level was the most important to get trained first? Or was it actually, look, I just need really effective training across the whole school? Was it, I wanted to get my leadership team understanding how the product worked before my teachers did? Because we have these conversations with hundreds of schools that use our platform. So I'm interested in what way you went with it.
I mean, schools are under, you know, under a huge amount of pressure, aren't they, to get good results year on year on year. And whatever your results last year, it doesn't really matter. It's about your next year's results. So the pressure is, and I guess maybe what some schools may do is just quickly roll out to everyone. I think as a leadership team, you've got to have credibility with your staff. And if you don't know the system inside out, and you know, you're not expected to know the answers to everything, but you need a solid understanding of a system, and then you might point people in you know, after Pupil Progress to get some more detail. But you've got to have a proper understanding, because otherwise you're not going to foresee any bumps in the road, and you have to look out for bumps in the road. You have to know what bumps could potentially come, because if you don't, then it's going to fail. So I think it's really important actually that okay, in my case, it was my deputy and her raising standards leader and the senior leadership team had got the good understanding first. We could then talk about any potential problems, whether it be around teacher workload, whether it be around how it links with different systems in the school, whether it links to, oh, we're rolling out something else for behaviour at the same time. You know, I think that level of understanding across your senior leadership team is really important before you then roll it out to your middle leaders. Sorry, you're on mute, Brett.
About now, is that right?
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
Oh, you wouldn't think I run a tech company, would you? There's always one.
I'm just glad it was you, not me.
Yeah, Christ. We probably won't be able to find a way of editing that out, so we'll just own it. So what's interesting there, I 100% agree with the understanding. So we've actually advised schools, again, same thing, any system. If your leadership team get caught short, i.e. we all get demonstrated against, here's a demonstration of the whole staff. This is what we're using. Guarantee, having had my experiences, and I've seen it in schools as well, the team will turn around straight to the department leader, the assistant principal, and go, does it do this? Does it do this? Does it do this? And all of a sudden your leadership team are going, well, let me go and have a look and then I'll let you know, right? So we actually advise, which is wonderful to hear you say, we actually advise, look, let's get your leadership team bought in on it, using it, let them ask us some questions. And then when we go to staff, then when they come with those questions to the head of department, because you're always going to, right? Then they feel that they're not, you know, on the back foot or ambushed. So it's amazing. I mean, was there any other comments to that at all when I'm saying that?
No, I don't think so. I think you know, it's the same when you're doing anything. It's not all. The other side of it is, you know, if someone does ask you a question, you don't know the answer, don't flounder around pretending you do. You know enough of it. You've done your research. You've had your training, but there'll always be a question that maybe is a bit sticky. But that's the advantage of, you know, I can then come to you and ask for support from Pupil Progress. You know, we can easily get advice and help if it's required, or point to another expert within the school. Yeah.
What I really liked as well, the second point to that with the leadership team first, is there's no one that better understands the school than the leadership team at a leadership level, and them identifying creatively what are going to be potential problems that we foresee. So, you know, no problem if you don't know any. What did can you remember some of the things that leadership turned around to you and said, have you thought about this? And do you think that could be a problem then?
Yeah, well, I think I've mentioned a few of them. The definite ones were around double entry of data. So putting the same data in 2 different places or 3 different places, which is a continual bugbear of teachers, because when teachers are putting data somewhere, teachers have already got the data on their classes. So they know their class. So when teachers are putting data in somewhere, often there's a thought, well, why am I putting this data in? I know my class. But when you're putting data in system, often you're putting the data in for someone above you. You're putting it in for a leadership team. So number one, why do I have to do this? Number two, why would I then do it twice? It just seems bonkers, and it's against good working conditions. So yeah, it was, you know, as I said, I saw this, you know, I saw Pupil Progress. I thought it could solve a problem we had. But rolling it out to my team and discussing with my team, it was someone on my team that said, right, okay, what about double entry? What about, will it fit with Broncom? You know, they look at the nitty gritty far more than I do, but that's why I create a team around me to pick up these issues. So every bump in the road was sort of foreseen by them. You know, I can give the big headline picture and say we need to roll this out, but at the same time, we need to make sure we're taking something away, we're reducing teacher workload. But actually, it's my leaders who spot the problems. So, you know, a head teacher rolling this out on their own, you're not going to identify those problems, because I'm in charge of a very large organisation and I can't know every single thing that is going on. So that's the job of my team.
Yeah, and it's also, it's not just about system rollout. That's just really good leadership, because it's also trusting the people in your organization that they can see things that you can't, because you're, like you said, you're only one person. Yeah, I mean, that's that. Just to kind of reframe that as well, just to kind of recap on that, really critical getting the leadership team to have a look at it first, come up with any problems, look down the road for you. I want to recap a lot of this at the end, because it's actually really interesting listening to people that have put this in practice. So a little bit about the training as well. Now, I suppose there's some advice here for people listening to you, is diving into the support packages that are available for these softwares, because they might have really great ideas. What were some of the things that worked well with the support or training? And what were some of the things that you came back to later on to say, look, you know, it was great that you provided this, but I need a bit more of this? Is there anything? I mean, what are your comments on the actual training, the importance of training when you're adopting these platforms?
It's really important, because I have worked with systems that have been rolled out trust-wide in previous trusts I've worked with, and the training hasn't been there. And however great the system is, if the training's not there, then the system fails, or everyone gets really frustrated straight away. And once you've hit that initial frustration with a system, human nature is you give up and you think the system's rubbish, but actually it's maybe because you haven't had the training behind it to launch it. So the training is essential. The training that we used from Pupil Progress was the level for the senior leadership team, and that was absolutely key to have the understanding. But then we wanted to do bespoke training for our staff, because leadership is about relationships, and it's about knowing your team, and it's knowing them individually. So we could have used Pupil Progress to come and train our entire team, but actually it's about that sort of drip feeding of information and the ability to have staff to use Pupil Progress while the training is going on, so through regular line management and that sort of thing. So having our senior leadership trained meant that we could have a long-term sort of drip feed of training that was going on over several months.
Yeah, go on.
And from that, we could identify staff. I think I mentioned earlier about bumps in the road. Well, bumps in the road are often through maybe resistance from staff, but resistance from staff, no staff are resistant for no reason. There's a reason someone's resistant, and it might be a fear of change. It might be a lack of IT understanding or digital literacy. It might be, systems we rolled out previously, here comes another one. So a bad experience. But actually, if you can unpick that and understand it, then you can work with people, because essentially everyone in education comes in because we want to make lives better for children and get them better outcomes. That's, we all have slightly different ways of agreeing how to do it. But having the skilled up, so going back to training, having seen leadership skilled up and trained meant that there was that ongoing support, but we always knew that our raising standard leader or a deputy could get onto Pupil Progress and get any support they needed and any extra training they needed.
I mean, I just wanted to clarify something there. So are you actually suggesting here that because the leadership team were trained and knew how to use it, you actually got a more effective adoption because a lot of the leaders were doing the training as well? Is that right?
I think so. I think it's just, you can quickly react to issues then on the ground. And I think it's a more effective way of doing it. Yeah.
I mean, that's some really incredible insight there, because if I actually think about it, it's made me think now, and I know Alistair will be watching this as well as one of the account leads responsible for all accounts across Pupil Progress customer base, is the power of the trusted leaders knowing and then adopting it. But not only that, going, well, I want to consistently talk about it in my line management meeting, so it's got that complete wraparound. I really want to talk about fear of change.
I think, can I just because I'm going to contradict myself slightly here as well, because I think it's also dependent on the team you've got in front of you. So I've talked very much about Eastbourne Academy. If you look at, and we may go on to this, look at what we're doing at Warden Park. we're taking a slightly different approach, actually. And we will be sitting in your email somewhere, Brett, is a request for you to come in and deliver some training for a small group of staff. So it is a slight contradiction, but we're doing a slightly different model at Warden Park, just because of where we are. And so each school is very, it's individual, isn't it? Personalised to what fits your staff best.
Well, I mean, that's a perfect segue to something I actually wanted to discuss. Again, just to remind the people, the reason I wanted to speak to Dan is because he's implemented these systems really effectively in 2 different contexts. So do share a little bit about what you've changed in the adoption at Warden Park, and also is that influenced by one of 2 things. One, what you learned from the adoption at Eastbourne Academy, but also a difference in context that you've got at Warden Park.
Yeah, I think it's a different context, and obviously you learn. I'm constantly learning from mistakes I've made, and from successes that we've had as a team. But the approach we're taking at Warden Park Secondary Academy is we're launching it with 5 departments initially. And why am I taking that approach? I guess I'm a new head teacher to Warden Park, and buy-in will take slightly longer because those trust levels have to be earned. As a head teacher, I earned those trust levels at the Eastbourne Academy. I've been there a while, staff got to know me, and we rolled it out. At Warden Park, I'm newer, and I'm gaining the trust of my staff. And so we're rolling out with 5 departments initially. We've very carefully chosen the departments we're using. We've got a range of different departments and different skills within the leaders who are adopting it. And we've also looked at a range of different departments who maybe assess in different ways. So I also don't have the structure in my leadership team that is different from what I was at Eastbourne Academy. So actually my skilled core group won't just be my senior leadership team. My skilled core group will be a section of my senior leadership team, and then a group of 5 middle leaders. And I guess I know it will be a success because I think it's a great product. It's something we've used to success in another school. But what will be interesting and powerful here will be that there'll be a group of middle leaders who have run it this year. And then when we roll it out whole school next year, other middle leaders will look at their peers, and it will be their peers going, well, look what we've done with it. So they'll have an even greater understanding of what's going on at that middle leadership level, and be able to share their expertise. So less of a top-down approach, I guess, which was required at Eastbourne Academy because we were looking for rapid improvement in grades that weren't good enough. At Warden Park Secondary Academy, we got absolutely amazing grades. We're looking to go to the next level. So different context and an advantage, different advantages to both rollouts, but very much dependent on the 2 schools.
Yeah, I mean that's critical information there, Dan, which is just the importance of one size doesn't fit all. And you had some great learnings from Eastbourne Academy, and then you're picking up a new context at Warden Park, which is actually very different, but really interesting to listen to about, well, effectively in summary, it's a bottom-up approach, not top-down. And it's interesting you're using your own reflection of your own position, which is how much trust do I have right now just to come in and start making massive changes before. So that's also context. It's not just the fact that Warden Park is in Haywards Heath. It's actually my own context, which I'm coming to a new school. So, I mean, yeah, really powerful leadership expertise there. I'm interested, how did you choose? Because there's a lot of people that might be listening to this that will go, I'm more in that camp. Actually, I'm a little bit new, or I'm struggling to get a bit of buy-in in certain circumstances. I need a bit of a bit of an understanding from the people at a certain level to help lift this. How did you choose those subject areas to engage with? Was it the leaders of those areas, or was it simply the subject areas that we needed a bit of uplift with? What was the thought behind it?
It was a mixture of leaders and type of curriculum areas. So I'll talk about that in a minute. It wasn't about which areas need a slight uplift. Although we did choose our top performing department happens to be in there as well. But we discussed it at senior leadership level, and we very much, I'd say the main discussion was around the people, was around the curriculum leader. And if we were successful with these curriculum leaders, and they're all very different, we haven't gone for one type, they're all very different curriculum leaders, they've all got their own strengths, and they've all got their own influences as well. And if we were successful with these 5, then it will be successful across the school. Now, also, I'm a geography teacher by trade, and the way I assess will be very different from the way a maths teacher assesses, or a science teacher, or more similar to a historian, actually. So we have got a range of subjects. So we've gone for science, we've gone for maths, we've gone for geography, we've gone for business studies, in order to field those questions that might come from a range of curriculum leaders to say, well, actually, this isn't going to work as well for my subject because my subject is assessed in a certain way. So that's where it's been the type of curriculum that's delivered and how it's assessed. We've ticked that box off as well. But the big discussion was around the curriculum leader and the impact and influence they can have when they show success. And there's differing levels of expertise within those curriculum leaders around use of data, and how they use data and data systems and software packages and different skill sets. So a real continuum of expertise and need. But if we get it right with these 5, then the proof is in the pudding for everyone else. Go, right, well, that's been successful there. It will be successful everywhere. So again, it's looking down the road for what could be the bumps in the road, what could be that, oh no, it won't work in my subject because, well, actually, we've got this whole range of subjects and we can see where it's worked in each one. And it's not just Dan bringing in a product from his last school that he used and saying that works there, because, as you say, it's not one size fits all.
To add some validation to that, by the way, we've seen a very large number of schools adopt our software in a very similar way, which is, look, I need some time. I need to do this right with the right people, and I need to get the buy-in. And I can see the vision you're selling here, but if we rush it, it's not going to work, and then we're going to have to reject it, and then coming back to it is not an option.
I could have easily come in September and gone, right, this is a great product, we're going to use it, roll it out everywhere. You know, we've planned our CPT. You know, you can't rush these things. If you want something to be sustainable and last for a long time, you've got to plan it properly. You've got to really think about the rollout.
I mean, there's 2 words that have really sprung to mind here. One is just how considered you were in both contexts, and really, you know, it's about also understanding your own context, because inextricably linked to a change in context, both geographically and also, you know, community change, everything. You've also got your own context, and then you've got a different context with the leadership team as well. So the word I've picked out is just how considered you were when you're sitting down with your leadership team, rather than just getting on a sales call with a software and going, yeah, I'll just do it with you know, maths, English, and science because they're our big 3, and I'll do it with. It's actually sitting down a meeting to go, okay, who are the people behind these departments, and also what can we evidence from that range of departments?
Yeah, it's your drivers, isn't it? And and funny enough, ours did end up with English, maths, and science, but that was not by design. It was by design. It wasn't by accident, is what I mean. So it was carefully considered. The fact that it turned out to be our core is just coincidence.
Yeah, I mean, and this is I'm a little bit obsessed with with leadership at all level, you know, all organizations and all levels. And it's all the little devil in the detail of these little things. Well, how has it worked when I know that the same software in similar contexts hasn't worked, and these are the things that I really wanted to share with people. So I wanted to ask you about the naysayers, the people that turn around and say, I don't care how good your software is, or I don't believe it. I mean, we've had teachers that have turned around to us and said, I can just do that on a spreadsheet. I don't know why on earth you're asking me to do, how did you tackle that in Eastbourne Academy? And also, how are you, helping teachers to understand that there is another way of thinking where you currently are as well?
Whether it's Pupil Progress or whatever, and actually, I don't, thinking back to Eastbourne Academy, I don't think I did have naysayers with Pupil Progress, but I did with other things, and I have in all my leadership roles had people who said that never worked for whatever reason. And to me, I go back to it's trying to understand what the fear of change is, or what the block is, and also then it's showing people, it's opening their eyes to a different way of doing things. Now, the best way to do that, I often find, is go and look at another school and see how they're doing it. And, you tell me a school you want to visit, go and see another curriculum leader, let's see how they're doing it. Let's send them to a conference to be, Pixel, for example, and say, go there and chat to a load of different maths leaders and speak to them and see the impact. Or, I can get someone to come and visit from a school that have used this before. So don't believe me. Go and listen to your peers further afield and see the success of it. And go and listen to your peers in the school. So if you've got that buy-in from 95% or 90% of your middle leaders, that last middle leader, it becomes harder for them to be a blocker and go, well, it won't work for me because, well, it will. And I think mainly it's about, I think that people I've come across in leadership who are those sort of blockers, it's because they need support in certain things. So, I can imagine many people have blockers around Pupil Progress because there's a fear of data, or there's a fear of how do I get this data in, how do I manipulate this platform, and that's where the training is really, really important. And the the hand holding, you're not just saying this, here's a training, off you go and do it. Well, here's the training, we've done it together, we're going to look at it together in line management, and just take the fear away, because blockers are generally scared of something, or it's an insecurity. It's not because they want to block something, and most things can be shown to be successful through training or through visiting other schools or going to conferences or whatever it might be. I'm not saying you don't get that, that 1% I've come across in my career who do maybe just want to block, but they are very, very, very few and far between, and there's always an underlying reason that you can hopefully work on. It's about knowing your staff and having good relationships with them.
So your expertise here is really shining through, and I'm listening to those solutions, which are all brilliant. What are your peers doing? I've modeled it here. Go and see another school. Go to where other people like you have as a responsibility. Get some confidence from what they're saying, like Pixel conferences. What I'm actually interested in is you use that word fear, right? And there's always an insecurity linked to that fear, which is so true. And again, the devil in the detail is often overlooked. Do you have any reflections, or feel free to advise? Why not? Your success is really clear. When you're talking to people that can't see they're potentially putting barriers in place, how are you sitting them down, having just a one-to-one and trying to probe a little bit and say, look, do you actually say, look, what's the fear here? How can I help?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to have very honest conversations and frank conversations. They're all, they're always polite and respectful and professional, but you have to be honest with people. Throughout my career, I've found that unless you speak to people honestly and clearly about what the issue is, you're never going to solve that problem. And when you have those frank conversations and are direct and say, look, this is what we're all doing. I've sort of shown you the solution. I've shown you what success it's going to have. This is whether it's been successful. You have a chance here. You know, you do get to a point with some people where it is that you just have to get on and do it. And then, funnily enough, you know, that's the very, very end of the road, with a tiny, tiny percentage. But when you get to that stage and people get on and do it, once they're doing it, funnily enough, the whole problem disappears. And that's where it's the fear, because actually you're just forcing someone to do it, but you're supporting them with it, and you're telling them you support them with it, and they do it once, and yeah, actually it's not that bad at all. It's it does work, and those blocks then don't come back. It's not a constant block. It's just a block that you have to figure out as a leader a way round. But yeah, these are one-to-one conversations. These are conversations in line management, and they're offering them an opportunity. Right, show me what the problem is. Talk me through the problem. And often people come up with a problem like, right, okay, we need to fix that. So let's take a step back. Let's see what we can do to fix it. Let's see what support we can put into place, and then that helps navigate the way through it.
Yeah, I mean, this is the stuff that's fascinating, because we've had some experiences with schools, and I will actually put some advice out there, actually, especially given how we've grown the company. And if you're trying to buy something as a software and they don't offer a way for you to actually adopt this at the time that meets your context, I would really push back on either you need to create a package for me, or you're going to have to wait a little. You're going to have to wait again until I can maybe do it as a whole school, because we've very quickly found out we have to be very adaptive. Do you want to start with 2 subject areas? Do you want to start with 5? Let's have that consultative process, because you've got people behind this software, and you've got this lovely process. It's wonderful, but you've got people that have got to then get their heads around it, get these insecurities, dealt with and appeased. And one thing I would also say as well, and I'd love your comments on, we've also found some of the fear is people feeling like I feel like I don't know that much anymore. And when you can go to a software that has a live chat, that has got articles where you don't have to go and keep asking someone, well, I've got some respect around school, and I have to keep going and ask someone. Well, if you can just go to the company and ask them directly, that's also really powerful. I mean, did you have any, because we've had a few schools where they're like, a few people that were being quite difficult have now found a way they can get all the answers they need, and they're happy as Larry. I mean, did you have any comments on that at all?
I think when I rolled out Eastbourne, because I said we didn't really have blockers, so I think we rolled it out very well. But that immediacy of training and response was essential for the leadership team that were running it. So the deputy and the raising standard leader, that response was invaluable. Speaking honestly, I don't know how much the curriculum needed to use it. They may have used it lots, they may have not, but that level of detail wouldn't have got to me. But I would assume it was, because it was rolled out so successfully. So that would have been part of the package. And I think that, just rewinding a bit as well, and just Pupil Progress, I first heard about it, I then talked to my team about it. This wasn't the whim of one head teacher. This was, here's an idea, let's discuss it as a team. Okay, now there's 8 of us in agreement. Well, it's very unlikely that all 8 of us are going to be completely wrong and introducing something that doesn't help the school. There is a chance that I could completely mess something up, but when I've shared it with 8 leaders who know the school inside out, there's very little chance that it's going to be a complete mess up.
Yeah, do you know what? There's something I heard a long time ago called the rule of the crowd, right? And it's this theory that if you asked someone how much a cow weighed, it would be out just dramatically because unless you've picked a butcher, you're not going to know, or a farmer. And then the idea is, if you asked 5,000 people and then divided that number by 5,000, you'd get the actual answer, right? And I've often used this in even growing Pupil Progress, is when you've got that group of people around you that know probably as much as let's just say 100 teachers each. Yeah. That's such a great philosophy to say, well, look, if I ask 8 people, that gives me my confidence. if they're all telling me, look, this looks like a great solution, you as a head teacher have got some confidence, because you're not just I'm not just losing my mind here. We've had the conversation and everyone else is bought in, and it's the power of buy-in. I mean, I don't know if you've got any other comments on that, Dan, or whether that just
I think it's absolutely spot on, and you hear these stories about local authorities or trusts who just bring in a top-down approach and dump something on a school, and it's the wrong thing because it's been thought of by one or two people for a whole group of schools. Well, so yeah, absolutely. The rule of the crowd is that the more people have had eyes on this and thought about it, the more successful it's going to be. Which is why I think you're absolutely right to pick up that every school has to go at its own pace, and Pupil Progress supports schools with that pace and is adaptive, and that's the most important thing.
Great. I mean, well, listen, Dan, I really want to thank you for your time, and I also want to thank you on behalf of other leadership, people in leadership across education are going to be listening to this. I'm going to be really pushing hard for people to have a listen, because again, I know that everyone would have done their qualifications, their masters, their MPQMHs, and that's important. But listening to someone who's done it and has worn the t-shirt and has learned from it and has got great insight from it, it's unbelievable. Just a quick, super fast synopsis. When you were adopting this, it was actually about really explaining the why, linking the why to a clear need for the school and the community, and most importantly, the students, giving someone that ownership, because they need that buy-in and that vision for themselves, but most importantly, like you actually really importantly added, that they want to impact on the outcomes of students and the community as well. The training, the biggest takeaway for me, and again, I know that our lead on our resubscriptions is going to be listening to this as well, which is leadership training, getting the leaderships knowing what it is that the system does, but also the foresight from your leaders who know the context to be able to come back around and say, well, have we thought about that as a problem? Have we thought about this as a problem? And then ensuring that when you do roll it out, the leaders are in a position to train and support and give the wraparound, ensure that the software itself provides support, which is absolutely critical. Because if the software is saying to you, we only have X amount of hours. I mean, I won't name and shame because I don't really believe in it, but we found the software recently that if you want to buy the software, that's great. But then you can pay for us to answer your questions faster. I was like, what? As if you're not paying enough already. This is a service. So, but the thing I also really love is the detail around the change management, with people who've got that fear and sitting down and saying, okay, talk to me. Let's have an honest conversation. What is the fear? How can I support you with the things that are either maybe an insecurity, or you're maybe got a bit of a blind spot as to what you're blocking. So the key for you as well, and overarching, understand the context, understand what capacity people have in your organization when you're implementing these whether it's a change initiative, whether it's an actual software, whatever it might be, because it's going to be you need to adopt it at the pace of the people around you, not just how fast you want to go.
Yeah.
That was I'm actually a little bit impressed with myself about that overview that you've been given.
I was sat there thinking, wow, you really did listen, didn't you?
Well, did you have anything that you think I maybe have missed, or any overarching comments?
I think, I haven't. We've talked a lot about leadership, but I'll talk about Pupil Progress directly. It's been the support from you guys. The platform's fantastic. It does exactly what we want, and I just think that's made the rollout easier. I mean, it really is a tool that aids teachers, gives amazing data to teachers and middle leaders, fantastic data to students and to parents as well, all at the sort of touch of a button. And I haven't come across something like it. So yeah, your platform has made this easy as well. And I think you mentioned cost earlier. I'll give you a massive plug here, but to me, it's just a no-brainer. Really, really, really beneficial for our community and our kids.
Well, I mean, that is, I really appreciate that, by the way. And, you know, I hand on my heart, I genuinely wanted to share with people today, someone with your level of experience and how to adopt any, because there is so many softwares coming into the market, which I welcome, because I do believe technology can really support schools and students and parents. But listening to you talk about how to do it, honestly, it's fascinating. It's some things I think myself and the team will learn from you as well. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. I can't thank you enough for your time. It's been so valuable, and I know people listening are going to find it valuable. Looking forward to getting it out there. Have a great Christmas, Dan. And we'll speak soon. I'll be coming over to Warden Park. Luckily for me, this isn't because the schools I've been to are, you know, maybe up in the Midlands, or this one's around, which is unbelievable.
We're hopefully seeing you February, I think it is. So yeah.
Yeah, perfect. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for your time, Dan. Much appreciated.
Nice to see you, Brett. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.